First of all, Nabil, thank you so much for coming by and being on the pod. I really sincerely appreciate it. I know that we've had some interactions in the past, and I just wanted to go ahead and dive into your photography business, MNK Pro, and I guess go ahead and take it from here.
Well, it's great, great to be here. It's like something like for the first time I'm doing something like this. So as far as our company goes, it started back in, I guess I would say, late 2015. I remember it because it was right after my son was born. And from there, I have my bachelor's in 3D animation and special effects from the Art Institute of Atlanta. And that was the field I was in. I worked in the field for a while, and then I was laid off. Then I found another job. Then I was laid off from there. And at the end of 2015, when my son was born, I was like, I really need to figure out what I need to do. I was like, because I can't just be working for these companies and keep getting laid off. I have no control over it. So at that time, I was just getting into the photography. Once my older daughter was born, I was, I bought my first DSLR, taking pictures of her. And I enjoyed doing that, and having my dad was also a photographer back in Pakistan.
Got it.
But I never really got into it until it became, digital.
So, I mean, like, could you tell me, like, how your upbringing and your father's work as a photographer actually influenced what your creative journey in any way, shape, or form? Like, did it influence it, or like, because most DC parents, they all want their kids to become doctors, lawyers, engineers, right? The typical Brown trio, you could say. But why? I mean, what was your dad's approach to that? Was it like, okay, I was a photographer, so it's okay for you to be, or like?
Well, my dad, he always wanted me to be a pilot.
Okay.
Like he always says pilot. He's fascinated by the planes and flight and anything aviation. So he always wanted me to be a pilot, but I never really, got into it. After high school, I guess every boy, loves video games. So I was like, I want to do animation. So he supported me with that. And he's like, okay, go for that. And that's what my degree was. But I saw him, growing up in Pakistan doing photography, and even in America, I saw him doing photography. But, developing those photos with all those chemicals, I just did not want to deal with that.
Oh, yeah. So then you existed during the time when, like, you literally would have to dip photos into like those infrared red rooms, right? Where then they would be developed and then they would come out.
Exactly.
So then, I mean, wow. So then how would you, like, oh my God, like, walk us through the process of doing that? I mean, like, I don't think many people even know about it today.
So helping my dad doing that, being in the dark rooms, mixing the chemicals and stuff. I did that a little bit, but it was just something I did not enjoy at all. Like something I was not into. So I was like, I don't want to do this when I grow up. I was like, I don't want to be a photographer. It was until like when I was going to college for my animation, one of the requirements was photography. Okay. So I had to take photography. And after I took that, and it was all digitalized by then, and I was like, I love this. I was like, we don't have to, go through mixing all the chemicals and everything. I was like, I can just compose a shot and then just see it right there on the screen, like how it's gonna look. I was like, this is perfect. I was like, so I love doing it as a hobby. That wasn't until I got laid off a couple of times where I was like, let me turn this into a profession.
So then, I guess, where did the spark for photography come? It came from that class in the Art Institute of Atlanta?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a spark. It was me and my friend. She was also an animation major. She switched her major after that class to photography, and I was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, why are you switching it up like right in the middle of college? And she's like, "No, I love it." I was like, okay. At that time, I did like it, but not enough to just switch my majors. It wasn't until my daughter was born and I was taking a lot more photos. I was like, man, I absolutely love doing this. And I was like, how can I do it? How can I scale it where I can just do this professionally and actually get paid?
So I recall reading that you were heavily involved in like photo editing, and then I guess how did that shape your approach to photography and like eventually establishing your company in itself?
So I've worked for this company called NCI. It was Network Communications. They do like a lot of the magazines, a lot of the real estate magazines. After I was actually there for I think 10 years, nearly almost 10 years. And so they had Real Estate magazine, but they also had high-end Unique Homes and some other publications. So for almost 10 years, what I was doing was, they would give me the photos. I was like, hey, edit this, color correct it, make the sky blue, make the grass green, and remove these cars, and all that stuff. So for almost 10 years, I was just editing photos to make them look as good as they could to be on the magazine covers.
So how does editing lead you to become a better photographer? Does it just help you in place the shot better now versus because like I remember when I started doing photography and stuff like that, and I'm editing, I'm like, oh my God, if I just had done the right pre-work, is what I call it, I would have had the perfect shot and I wouldn't have had to do so much, right?
So it gives me a little bit of a better idea to how to compose a shot. A lot of times when I'm actually, shooting a couple, I'm looking at the couple, but my whole idea is like I'm looking all the way around the background, where to angle the couple, where I can block some outlet or some wire that I don't have to remove later on, or like some distracting thing in the background. So like editing so much for 10 years, it gave me the eye. I was like, all right, where do I need to place this shot? How do I need to compose it in order to just get the best results, out of the camera, where I have to do the least amount of editing it later on.
So when you left NCI, did you immediately start up the business, or what was the process or the transition period? Walk me through that little piece, and I guess let's start there.
So when I got the news that I was getting laid off, the company was bought over by another company from Chicago. I was actually at the hospital. My son was being born that day, and I was in a little bit of shock. I was like, okay, I don't have a job anymore. So what am I gonna do? So, there was a severance package and whatnot. I've been there for a while. So I had a few months to think about what I wanted to do. I wasn't in like panic mode or anything like that. But I was like, let me, apply for some jobs here and there, which I did. I applied for I think close to 100 jobs, and with no callbacks.
It sort of reminds me of today's era, right? Where you have the proliferation of AI, you have maybe even people doing multiple jobs in some cases. So therefore the presence of those jobs are not there in today's market. Right. And it's rough, 100 jobs. So then, the mental struggles then, you have a family to take care of. Walk me through those mental struggles, if you had any, throughout that period in time.
So I had, over the years, I've been good with, money situations. So financially, I had saved up where, I'm good for 6 months, but 6 months go by real quick when you don't have a job. So I was applying, but I was also thinking what can I do? So at that time I had, a little bit of money. I was like, let me try to get into this wedding photography. I was like, I enjoy photography so much. I was like, that was the only option that I saw that I was like, I can kind of scale it. I was like, there's so many weddings going on. I was like, let me get into that, because I can, what I saw at that time, I'm talking about 8-9 years ago. At that time, what I saw, the wedding photography, especially in our Desi community, I was like, okay, there's shot there. I was like, I didn't see any creativity. I saw very boring photos, videos. I was like, I think we can do it better. And that's when I was like, let me do photography. And then when I reached out to a lot of the people, they were like, do you do video as well? So I was like, let me try to put together a team and see how we go.
MashaAllah. So I'm just walk me through this. Why would wedding photography be more scalable than, let's say, real estate or automotive or any of the others? Is there any specific? What's the uniqueness to weddings that the others don't have?
So in the beginning, I didn't realize which direction is gonna go in. I know I wanted to do photography, so my first business cards and my signs are photography, real estate, and events. Because I really thought it was going to go into real estate, because that's what I was editing, all these years. I was like, I've been editing, real estate stuff. I think that's probably most likely is going to go into that. So when I printed out my business, I was just handing out my business cards to every person I saw. And so I did get a couple of, calls for real estate. I did do, a few real estate photography. That wasn't until one time when I got an inquiry for a wedding. And I wanted to shoot a wedding, but it was so exciting. I was like, it wasn't like real estate where it was empty house, boring, and you just set up your camera, take a shot, go to the next, take a shot. Like this was like on, like boom, 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 like things are happening. You're running around.
It's heavy action filled,
Yeah,
right?
it's chaotic, and every event is like completely different from the last. So it kind of gave me the rush. I actually enjoy it. Like I enjoy every wedding I do, even up until right now. Like I think about it throughout the whole week. I was like, oh, I got this wedding coming up. I was like, it's gonna be fun. So that's what kind of drove me towards that. And then once I posted, some of the photos from the first wedding we did, I immediately started getting inquiries. Not like crazy, but I was like, hey, we have a wedding coming up in a few months, and so I did like few weddings like the first year. The second year it jumped up to like 20, 30 weddings.
Oh
Then
wow! So the first year was like maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And then the second year you basically quadrupled that number.
Yeah.
And then what about the year after? Did you like?
I think we double or triple. Like
Oh, wow.
every year it went almost doubling, but the last few years I try to stay at the same amount. We do a little over 100 events every year, but I pick and choose which events. Like because every weekend, almost like every weekend, we have multiple inquiries. So for instance, like for May 25th, that's like a popular, like any popular dates for American holiday is huge for Daisy's.
Of course.
Because everybody's off.
Yeah.
So everybody wants to have their event on Thanksgiving weekend, Christmas weekend, Memorial Day, Labor Day. So those dates, you have like 10, 15, 20 inquiries from like for that same date.
Wow.
And then,
so then how do you pick and choose which one's the best for you?
So I talk to the clients. I see, what their needs are and see what kind of, people we're working with. I like to go with, I like to think of myself as an easygoing person. So if I'm having a lot of red flags, I tend to just kind of not go towards that. Like if I'm,
So what's a red flag? Give me an example of what that would be.
like the first thing would be, hey, what's the best price you can do? Without looking at my work, without paying attention to what we provide, like they'll be like, hey, how much do you each cost? I was like, hey, there's, it's not just like,
It's not just
simple
cost, right?
Yeah,
It's
I was like, you can't walk into a dealership of a car, or like car dealership. I was like, yeah, how much is a car? And they're gonna ask you like what your needs are, like what are you looking for? There's a lot of questions that go in, but like the first red flag is like if somebody starts off with, how much is it?
Yeah. I think that's the same thing we find in a lot of entrepreneurship in general. It's like if the first question out of the client or the customer's mouth is, how much can you do it for? It's like they're usually not the right client, especially when you're starting, because you need that margin in order to grow, in order to invest into the business itself. And if they're so cost conscious, it's like, I mean, you run the risk of just burning yourself out as well. And I guess maybe we can talk a little bit about that too. Like, have you ever burned yourself out while doing this kind of work, especially when you establish the business? Because I'm assuming that when you started, you were there alone, and probably today you do have a team, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know how big your team is currently.
So right now I have, like in the beginning, I was editing all the photos, I was editing all the videos. Well, in the beginning, I had my brother. He graduated with film from, I can't remember the name of the school, Georgia. It's in downtown.
Georgia State?
Georgia State, yeah.
Got it.
So Georgia State, he got his degree in film. So I wanted to start with him. He's doing video, I'm doing photos. And so he was editing some of the stuff, but he decided the weddings and stuff is not for him. He wasn't enjoying it. He wanted to do actual films. And so I had to look around. He wasn't married. I was married with kids. I was like, I had no option. I was like, I was all in on this. So I was like, I had to find other people. So Lewis, he's one of my main videographer right now. He's with me in almost all the events. And so in the beginning, I ran into him. Somebody introduced me to Lewis. So he's been doing my videos. But now I found a right photo editor. So I don't have to worry about any of the editing on the photos. And video, I do some of the editing. Somebody else does a little bit of the editing, but I overlook all that stuff. But I take enough events where I'm not overwhelmed. In the beginning, like not in the beginning, but in the mid years, I was finding myself on the computer from morning till evening, and then maybe take a couple hour breaks, and then from evening till like 2, 3 in the morning. But now I really have it set, like good schedule. I wake up in the morning, spend 2 hours on the computer, and then 2 more hours in the evening, and then I'm free for the rest of the day with the kids and do other stuff.
So how many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids.
MashaAllah, that's amazing. Is 2 boys and 1 girl? Or?
2 girls and 1 boy.
Oh, my mistake, the other way around. So, how I guess how when you're actually shooting a wedding itself, right? How do you plan the shots, or do you plan those shots at all, or is it more of a run and gun kind of scenario? Like,
So it's a little bit of both. If we have, let's say, if we have a lot of time, if somebody books me for like a 6-hour wedding, so we like to, start off with, some. It's pretty like every wedding is almost kind of like a template, for some of the smaller weddings. We do some getting ready shots. We do some photography for the bride and groom photo shoot, and family photos, and then go into the event itself. I always like to have the timeline, well ahead of time from the client. A lot of times in our culture, like, there is no timeline.
of course, it's like
everything is just going
जितना
as
वक्त है
is.
तो चलने दो, right?
Yeah, बिल्कुल ऐसे. लेकिन मैं जो चाहता हूँ, I always tell them, I was like, come up with something, a rough timeline, so my team is familiar with what's gonna happen, so we can prepare like where our lights are gonna be. If it's gonna be cake cutting right after your entry, if it's gonna be speeches or dua right after your entry, so we can prepare where we're gonna put our lights, where we're gonna be, moving towards, so it's not a chaotic situation going on.
Got it. So I'm just curious, what kind of gear are you typically using? Are you using Canon, Sony, mirrorless, or like?
So everything is mirrorless. Like
Yeah.
everything is mirrorless. For video, we're using Sony
Got
FX3.
Okay.
So we have a couple of those, and then for photos, I'm using Canon.
Got it.
for
And all full frame?
all full frame,
Got
all
it.
mirrorless.
Got it.
I switched it over to a mirrorless the day it came out. Like the first Canon R was a mirrorless one when it came out. I got that, and then the R6, the R6 Mark II. So always mirrorless is just better.
So which one do you prefer, Canon or Sony? Is it? I mean, like each one I know has its pros and cons. From what I know, at least from little I know, right, is that Canon typically has better color science out of the box, and then Sony is, I guess, it doesn't have as great color science, but it has more flexibility in terms of editing, right?
So I can't really tell a difference.
Got it.
I do color correction for 6 other national magazines right now. I do color correction. They send me their photos to do color correction. I can't tell if something was shot on Sony or Canon. But
Because they're just that good?
They're all just that good. Is like the reason I'm with Canon is because I started with Canon, and I have all my gear, like all my lenses. Lenses are costing more than the camera bodies.
Of course.
So if you have your money invested in all these, prime lenses, 1.2, you pretty much is gonna stay.
What's
with,
a prime lens for the audience that doesn't know?
So a prime lens is like something that is not zoomable. Like you have zoom lenses or like 24 to 70, 35 to.
So whenever a lens basically says like it's 24 to 70, that hyphen giving you a range, that's
yeah,
a
you can zoom in,
lens, right?
zoom out. But I like to use just prime lenses. There's no zooming in, zooming out. I use, for my wide angle shots, I use 15 to 35. So that is a zoom lens, but I always have an 85 millimeter on my second camera body. So that's a prime lens. So when you have all this money invested into the lenses, you just stick with that camera brand. So it wasn't because I didn't like Sony, but you got to start with one brand, and then it takes a lot for you to switch. But like my videographers now, like both my videographers, they used to have Canon, and one time, one of the guys used Sony A7, and then when I saw the difference in the quality, the video was so much cleaner on the Sony. I did ask my videographer. I was like, we got to switch it. I was like, I know it's gonna take a hit because we got to get the lenses and all that, but we have to switch. And we did, and since then, both of my videographers would get same camera bodies and usually same lenses, so we can have match the quality just evenly.
Yeah, because in that way, color correction would be easier, right?
Right.
Quality, everything else is the same, right? Pretty much.
Right.
Got it. So walk me through a little bit more of the creative processes. Like once you get all that footage and video, like are you putting it in DaVinci? Are you putting it in Adobe Premiere? Are you mixture?
Final Cut Pro.
Got it. Okay.
I do Final Cut Pro. Lewis, I believe he does Premiere, but I do Final Cut Pro because in the beginning, I did use iMovie. You know, I use that for professionally. Like the first couple of years, then I switched it over to. I used to use like back in college, I did Premiere Pro because basically all Adobe Suite. That's what all we used. So we did use that, but you know, since I switched it over to Mac and everything, Final Cut Pro has been working great. For me, I just use that.
Got it. See, I wanted to eventually transition over to the Adobe side, and the main reason behind that was because of the audio pieces that they have, like the audio, and then there's something, at least for podcasting, where if you get Adobe Premiere Pro, there's an add-on called AutoPod, which will automatically cut up a podcast.
Okay.
This is like, okay, it's $40 a month, and then an additional 40, like, okay, $80 a month, and I get all my podcasts completely like edited. But I figured, let me learn how to do it first and understand it before I then transition over or have, you know, revenue coming out of the pod. So it's just a thought in my process. But then I guess, I mean, how do you make sure you capture all these like critical emotional moments in a wedding? I mean, like, I guess because you shot so many, it's so easy for you now. But if somebody's trying to learn to get into photography, what's the best thing that you would advise them to do?
So that's why it's so critical to have a timeline, right?
Yeah.
So when we have the timeline, and I talk to the bride and groom or whoever that I'm dealing with, the point of contact for that day, I was like, hey, anything important that's happening, any kind of ceremony, anything that's important to you or special to you guys, give me 2 minutes to 3 minutes heads up, because I could be over here taking a photo of like some of the guests, and all of a sudden the mother-in-law is putting a necklace on the bride or something.
Yeah, and you're missing that critical
moment.
moment.
I was like, anytime somebody goes on the stage to do something with the bride and groom, I was like, you give us 2 minutes heads up. So we're ready for it, we're prepared, we're over there with our lights and everything and capturing it. So I was like, so I actually have that on my contract as well. I was like, you got to give us 2 minutes heads up before you know, anything important's happening so we can capture it. Otherwise, if you miss it, it's, you know, it's not going to be our fault.
I'm just curious that from a legal standpoint, right? Like when you started the business, you probably just had a boilerplate like template of like, okay, this is what we agreed to, and this is what we do. I'm guessing that has evolved over time to include a lot of different things. But when you initially had it, was it just like a Word document? And
it was just one page document. I was like, we're going to be here from this time to this time, and this is how much it's going to cost, and we're doing photos and videos. Over time, it's still not that complicated. Like I like to keep it very simple, because there was one point where it was up to like 7-8 pages long, and people were going, I was like, what is this? I'll get back to you after I show it to my lawyer. So I cut it down to it's still very simple. It's 2-3 pages, but it does include, you know, you can expect your photos and videos, you know, in this many weeks. Your videos will be ready in this many weeks. And then, you know, if there's anybody special coming from out of town that you want to get photographs, you got to let us know who that is, you know, at the event. Because we can't read your mind. Like, we don't know where anybody's from. Because in the beginning, I was getting some of the, someone was like, hey, our chachu came from London, but we don't see his photo. I was like, how am I supposed to know that? You know?
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, anybody special guest coming, I was like, a lot of times people send me like photos of some of the important people. They're like, hey, these are the important people. And then throughout, you know, last few years, what I like to do is like when I get there, I just talk to the point of contact. I was like, who's your immediate family? Who's, you know, the important people coming out of town? I was like, make sure we'll capture that.
Got it. So how, I mean, in I guess most businesses typically leverage social media to a degree, right? To grow their audience, to grow their following, to grow everything. And I noticed that your TikTok actually has a significant amount of attention actually to it, like the views. How has the TikTok actually fueled the growth of MNK Pro?
So I believe Instagram, more than anything else, had grown my business, because that's what I get the most inquiries from.
Is that where you get the most conversions as well?
Yeah. So TikTok has been good. I started maybe, I don't know, like 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. TikTok is what I've noticed last few years. Like whenever I put like dance performances, like people love watching those. And whenever I put like highlight of the weddings and stuff. It's not so much so for TikTok, I just use it for entertainment, basically. Like somebody who just wants to watch like dance videos and performances, and
So
just have a
you
little
basically, so on the TikTok side of things, you're not seeing a high level of conversion. You're seeing it for more entertainment purposes, right?
Correct.
Whereas on the Instagram side, it's like, oh, this is the person I want to shoot my wedding or whatever.
Correct.
Maybe, right?
Yeah, for Instagram, I don't post a lot of the, just low quality stuff. I want to have a high quality stuff. I don't want to put just cell phone. Like I've noticed, like if I have cell phone footage, video, or something low quality of just somebody just dancing, and I post that on my reels, it gets a lot of views, but it doesn't make my page look good. So I don't post anything that's I don't think it's like super high quality. I don't post anything like that on Instagram anymore. I just save all that stuff for TikTok.
Got it.
And for Instagram, I just want to post high quality content where people can just check it out and I was like, oh, that's the way I want my wedding to be shot.
So I'm just curious, I mean, as a Muslim entrepreneur, how has your faith influenced your work ethic, creativity, or approach to business in itself?
So I like to shoot. I enjoy shooting Pakistani weddings, Muslim weddings. I enjoy those. I know it's like a lot of times it's, things are running behind, things are running late. The thing is, like, I enjoy doing those. And you can actually tell, like, when you go on my Instagram page, I don't post anything that, has anything inappropriate, basically. It's very clean. And I actually shoot all my weddings like that too. So a lot of time I find that to be a little bit of a challenge, basically. So a lot of times I do, so many Pakistani and Muslim weddings. So when I'm shooting like a Hispanic wedding or an American wedding, I find myself that I was like, I need to be telling them to do the kissing shot. They're like, hey, we want to do a kissing shot. I was like, oh yeah, that's normal for you guys. So I was like, oh yeah, we got to do a kissing shot for you guys. But on my Instagram, like, I keep it very clean. And anybody can go on my Instagram page and see it's like, oh, it's, it's clean photography. It's, I like to do all my photo shoots after the nikahs. A lot of times I am asked sometimes to do photo shoots before nikah. I always try to tell people, I was like, hey, it'll be a lot better if we do our nikah and then do the photo shoot right after that for the bride and groom. That will work out a lot better, and then we can do a lot more closing, posing
more intimate shots, basically, right? Okay. Were there any unique challenges or opportunities that you think that Muslim creatives in general here in Atlanta? Are there like unique challenges, I guess, in this particular industry for Muslims in general, if they were to pursue this as an avenue?
I wouldn't say a lot of challenges. The market for Atlanta is pretty big, and
so how would you determine the market? Is it just the number of weddings that happen, or?
Yeah, I think it's the population, the Muslim population in Atlanta. I think we just got lucky. Like, I got lucky that I was living in Atlanta because I could have been living in North Dakota or somewhere. Like, I don't know. Because when my dad moved here, I was lucky that we moved to Atlanta, and at that time I didn't know what I was gonna be, but it actually worked out in our favor.
When did you move to Atlanta, by the way?
1990.
Wow. So
I was 13.
Mashallah. So then basically you were what, about 13 years older than me then?
Right.
Okay, wow. So then that means that like most of your life, so when you were 13, that means 5 years in you went to Art Institute Atlanta, I'm guessing, right after high school?
Right after high school. Well, I took like 6 months off after high school. I started with AIU, American Intercontinental University. I was there for 1 year. Then I realized it wasn't really something that I was interested in.
I'm just curious, how has the community supported you in your business, and how have you given back to the community, if you have?
So, community was a huge, it has helped me out so much. I wasn't very close in the community. Like, I didn't go to any of the Desi functions or anything like that with my mom and dad. And then I started doing the photography for, Desi families, and then my mom's friends. I gave a lot of my cards to them, and a couple of them, they did decor. I was like, hey, ask your friend, if they need photographer, blah, blah, blah. And I actually got first few of my gigs were by Yasmin from Royal Decors.
Okay.
She actually paid me to go take photos of her decor. Nobody else wanted to do that. Everybody else was like, "Hey, go take photos of our stuff, and then we'll promote you. We'll tell people about
So
you."
how do you deal with that objection that a lot of people like bring up, right? Especially when they're starting, it's like, oh, you're starting photographer, just take the photos and we'll promote you. And it's like, that's such a common phrase I've heard, and other photographers that I've spoken with, they've heard that, and sometimes they can't even get past that hurdle in some cases. So,
Yeah.
well, how do you address that objection?
So at that time, I was so new to the whole thing, and when you realize your work is good, like people are gonna hire you. So with Yasmin, she paid me for her taking photos of her decor, and a lot of the clients that were, well, I wouldn't say clients, a lot of the people were like, "Hey, come take photos of our food or our clothes, and we'll just recommend you to everybody." And then I politely turned it down. I was like, "I'm sorry." I was like, "I don't have time for all that stuff." I was like, "If you need to hire me, we can do that." There were a couple people I did it for, but they were like close to my mom and dad or friends and family and stuff like that. But I was getting a lot of stuff from, restaurants and whatnot that I didn't know anything about, and they just wanted me to do. I was like, this camera like I spent all my basically servants package on the camera, lens. I didn't have much, but I had one camera body, 2 lenses, 1 flash. I was like, I need to get paid so I can start, buying more stuff because I needed more equipment.
Okay, and then I guess looking back in the past, it's been almost 8 years since you've started MNK Pro. I mean, like, what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur in the creative industry and in the photography industry? What's like one of the biggest takeaways?
I guess one of the biggest takeaway would be, you need to be more social. Like, you cannot be like a shy person and then expect somebody just to come and talk to you and hire you. Like, I always thought I was very shy. My wife thinks otherwise. My wife is like, "Oh, you love talking to people." But I guess that's how people see me. But, I'm more of a quiet person, just by myself. I'm happy with. But realizing, talking to people, I enjoy talking to people. It's just, I like to be by myself most of the time. And then when you talk to people, you communicate, make connections. This is the number one thing, like, for you to grow. Talking to people and building those relationships. A lot of times, like a lot of the weddings I've shot, a lot of the couples, like we still talk. We still hang out sometimes whenever possible. If I'm in the area, like some weddings I've shot in Alabama, like, "Hey, whenever you're here, let's go have lunch." And so it's a connection. I think when you talk to people, it opens up a lot more opportunities for you.
So I'm just curious. You mentioned that going into the wedding photography, it's almost like electric and energizing for you, and that keeps you motivated in a way, right? Do you ever see that dying out, or like, I mean, with age, does that change? I'm just curious because like, there are some entrepreneurs who go and do something for 10 years and then they have to switch gears, right? Or they pivot and they change and then they go like, you know what? I like this direction, but I want to change it in this direction to see what else can I achieve, right? And it's interesting that you did something for 10 years and then you pivoted, because most people, especially when they're young, similar to my age or even younger, they see one thing and they go like, they do it for like 3 months and they switch over and they switch over and switch over. How did you create that discipline for yourself to create like an outsized return in this industry?
So once I started seeing that the quality of work is great, people are loving it, I started pushing it more and more. Now, obviously, over the last years, I had to change my pricing. I started with a lot cheaper packages, but then I saw myself working too much even though I love doing it, I was like, it's got to be able to pay the bills, it's got to be able to support my family. So over the years, the pricing have changed to reflect the amount of work it takes to produce a final product. You know, most people don't realize it. Still now, I go do I go shoot a wedding, and then I'm getting text messages maybe 2-3 days later. I was like, hey, where is our stuff? And I'm talking about 2-3 days later. I was like, oh, just check your contract. I have the timeline right on the contract. You know, it takes a few months. So and when I break it down to like the photo editing, the video editing, like each hour you shoot, it's 6 to 7 hours of editing. So if you're shooting a 6-hour wedding, 7-hour wedding, you're looking at 40 plus hours of editing. And so that takes time, and you can't just do 40 hours of straight editing. You know, it takes time. You do a few hours one day, a few hours next day. So it goes into the months, you know, and then that's when you get the final product. And people don't realize how much editing, and not just editing, but it's just the shots that you want in order to flow the way you want. It takes time, but the final product, when people look, like I have perfect Google reviews. Like I've never had anything under 5 stars. So people are happy with the product. So when I realize, you know, people love the stuff, and if I keep doing what I love and people love it, it's just gonna keep growing. And that's what happened. Like it just kept growing. And I see where you came up with, like, it is tiring, you know. Now I'm getting in my late 40s, you know. I'm 47 right now. I can still move around a little bit, but I do realize, like, sometimes my knee's hurting, sometimes my ankle is hurting. And some of the weddings that we do, they're 12-hour long, you know. There's like 6 hours in the morning, 6 hours in the evening, and it does get tiring. So I do see in the next, I don't know how many years, I can't predict the future, but there's gonna be some time where I'm gonna be just in the background directing, like where I want, like what kind of shots I want. I'm still very into telling my team like exactly what I want, like what kind of shots I want, and they're very good with, you know, capturing what I'm asking for them. But I see myself more so in the background, you know, still running the company basically, but not so much up in the front and capturing everything, but just kind of behind the scenes.
So then I'm just curious, when you started alone, when you hired your second employee, I mean, like, was that something new to you? I mean, like, was that something different? Because the thing is, like, normally when people work in a company, right, they have a team, everything's already like pre-decided for you. Oh, these are the tasks you're going to tackle today. But in your own company, since you're the owner and you basically dictate the terms of what will happen, how do you determine what activities actually help you achieve your target? Like, how do you make good quality decisions in your business so then that way you knew that you could grow with that?
So over the years, we've had many team members come in and out, but when you work with somebody and you're working with them for hours straight, you realize their work ethics, their vision basically. And Lewis has been with me almost since the beginning, and we basically trained together, you know, learning together, achieving, you know, the results that we want. So we have a lot of understanding on like what kind of shots we want, what kind of lighting we want. So when you're working with something like somebody like that, you know, you want them to be part of your team for the long term. Some people came in and out. Some team members I saw didn't have the work ethics. You know, they're just kind of talking a lot, walking around a lot, not really paying attention to what needs to be done. So you kind of phase that, like you realize what kind of talent you want to work with, and you just hold on to those people.
Got it. And where do you see MNK Pro in like the next 5 to 10 years? Or do you see any other ventures that you're going into? Are you investing into some other tools or other businesses? Are you acquiring any businesses?
Not really acquiring any businesses, but I do want to get into a little bit more into commercial shoots. I'm not really sure what type. I really do want to do car commercials. Like that would be like my dream.
I mean, you have Porsche right here in Atlanta, right? And then up in New Jersey, you have Ferrari, and then a couple other manufacturers out in Michigan. So I mean, like, I don't think it would be too hard, right?
Yeah,
It's just
I
getting
need
in
to
front of the
reach
right
out,
people, right?
Yeah,
It's really like how I reached out to you. It's like, hey, let's go ahead and do it, right?
right,
And it's just a matter of, you know, one yes is all it takes.
right. Yeah, so I do see in the future doing some sort of commercials. Yeah, we haven't started on anything right now. Right now, we're just focusing on the weddings. Like even now, we're booked out most of the weekends for 2025. So my focus is all on that. Once I see that I'm getting, you know, kind of not so excited by all the weddings, I may run into.
And what's the fascination with car commercials? I think you had a Porsche, right?
I still have it, yeah.
Okay.
I still have the Porsche. It sits in the garage most of the time, but I do take it out. I love cars, and even when I took the photography class in college, I was taking like all these times. I was like, "Oh, take some photos." I would go take photos of the cars and stuff. I've been fascinated with cars ever since high school. Ever since I started driving.
Me both.
So cars has always been a passion of mine. So it's just natural.
Is it Porsche Cayman, Boxster?
Yeah,
Okay.
Cayman.
Wait, what generation is it?
It's the first one.
Got
It's a 2007,
Okay.
987. But it's fun. It's all manual and everything, so I enjoy driving it.
Mashallah.
It's,
I mean, I had a 87 BMW 325 IS I was restoring. I unfortunately had to let it go. I had to sell it. But I mean, like, even in my childhood, like, I was, I guess you could say, a gearhead. I loved rotary engines, Mazda, Ferrari.
my first car,
Lamborghini,
my second car was a 1979 RX-7.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was red with black leather interior. We bought it from some old lady. She's like, "Oh, it's the engine is no longer working or whatnot." So we bought it for $300. Me and my best friend, he was car fanatic. He still works on even though he's working for UPS, working on their cars now, like the trucks and stuff. So he's a full-time mechanic now. But we got it to the house. He jumped the battery. Everything was working perfectly. I get a phone call. We were in high school. So when I got home, he didn't come to school. And then, there was no cell phones or anything like that. So my home phone's ringing. I was like, "Where are you?" He's like, "I'm in Florida." I was like, I started driving this car and I just kept going. I didn't want to stop. So he was somewhere in Florida. And so we love that car. It was RX-7, all 5-speed. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, like, rotary engines are unique in themselves, and I guess it's a topic for another pod, you could say. If you could collaborate with any, like, artist, brand, or organization, like, I mean, who or what would it be and why?
Oh, man. Collaborate
Collaborate or do work for, either or.
It would be the car company. Like, I don't have, any photographers or anything like that.
Do you look up to any specific photographer at all, or just like?
No, of course I follow some of them on Instagram. It's just part of the business. Run into people, you follow each other.
Got it.
I love looking at, all their work, and, everybody has their style, and I like looking at different styles and see how everybody approaches, their work. But I don't have any fascination of like working with anybody or like, collaborating with anybody. I do some collaboration. Oh, earlier you asked me about giving back to the community, and I did want to mention, like, I do a lot of the, not a lot, but I do like few events whenever possible. They had the Gaza fundraiser. I did 2 of those, Palestine fundraiser. So I do those like, free of charge. Those are all sponsorships and all that stuff. So
And that's noble. I mean, like, in a way, because it's like, maybe that's one of the reasons why you would enter Jannah, inshallah. Because think about it, like, even this podcast, in a way, it's like a sadqa jariyah for the people who watch it, right? It's a way to bring your knowledge to them. And in a way, it's also helping the younger generation that will be watching this. Hey, how do I start up a photography business if I'm interested in that? And that was the whole legacy of Diary of a Muslim Entrepreneur. That's the whole purpose of it, at least. And I guess I'm lucky in the sense that I get to ask you all these questions because it's almost like it's free game for me, right? I get to learn and I get to understand your business a bit better, and hopefully for the audience to that understand it better too, right?
Right.
But I appreciate it. Thank you for clarifying that answer. And then I guess one of the questions I had for you was like, where does the name MNK come from? Actually, is that your full name?
That is my full name, Muhammad Nabil Khan.
Got it.
So the origin of MNK Pro was, again, I was right after high school. The Xbox came out, and I was really into video games, so that was my gamer tag, MNK Pro. So once we were in college, MNK Pro stuck with me because one of the projects was, hey, if you created a business, what it would be? I was like, MNK Production. And they're like, oh, okay. So I use MNK Production for the business name and all that stuff. And then later on, I was like, pro can be used for so many things.
Yeah.
Product, production, productive, like not professional, but.
No, I mean professional too, right?
Oh yeah, like professional. There was like so many words that went with pro. So I was like, I'm gonna stick with MNK Pro, which is, basically my initial, and then you can use the pro for anything.
So,
I think my T-shirt right here. So
yeah, it says prosper, promise, proud, pro, propel, provide, and process.
Yeah. So
I was like, hey, mashallah, that's a lot of uses for that particular 3-letter word, right?
Right.
What's been your favorite wedding to shoot in recent memory, and what's been the worst in your opinion? I'm just curious.
I mean, nothing in particular. Like for the
Like
best weddings,
what would make it the worst? I guess.
What would make it worse would be
Bridezilla?
no kind of structure. Basically, we did one wedding where the bride and groom never showed up.
What?
Until it was for us time to go, like 11 something at night. And the whole event was packed. I don't know what the situation was they were running into. We were just packing up to leave. That's when they came up, and then we did like quick shots and got some of the stuff done. But it was so late. It was like, I think it was past midnight. That's when the bride and groom actually came. They were supposed to come at 7:00. So situations like that are really bad. The best weddings are always like the one they're on time, things are happening, organized, what's going to happen next. A little bit of chaotic is very natural, very, it's not unusual at all, but, have some sort of structure of like, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is where we're going to be, a little bit on and off, a few minutes here and there is, totally fine. I love covering all the weddings. And of course, it was super fun covering the wedding in Cancun. It was long days, but the time that we did have, just hanging out, going to the beach, and just enjoying the whole atmosphere, it was a lot of fun.
So, do they normally pay for your flights, or do you have to fly out there on your own dime?
Yeah, any kind of destination wedding or out of town. We do a lot of weddings in Alabama and South Carolina. So my packages are basically same price as what I charge here, but they would have to provide two hotel rooms and flights.
Okay. Just a little bit of a fun question here. If you weren't a photographer, what career or passion do you think you'd be pursuing right now?
Right now? I can't even think of that right now. Not a race car driver. But I enjoy talking to people. I would say, I guess it's related to it, but I love ads. I love even print ads. Like, I love anything that's, play around with words.
So like copywriting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I enjoy those. I enjoy the layouts. I like graphic design stuff a lot. It's just, in the beginning, I also thought about it, doing the graphic design work. But after college, but it's not really something I got into that much, but I enjoy doing it. So if I had to.
that would be probably the
That would be-
direction you would have taken.
Right.
All right. Well, where can people find you on socials?
Well, my Instagram is at MNK Pics,
Mm-hmm.
and then my TikTok is at MNK Pro. My Facebook is MNK. The reason is MNK Pics is like I never thought MNK Pro was gonna take off.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I already had MNK Pro for my graphic design and all that stuff. You know, after my college, so that was already taken. So I ended up with MNK Pics, and then it really took off. But my Instagram and my Facebook is MNK Pics. My TikTok and my website is MNK Pro.
Got it. All right. So I'll go ahead and put all of that in the description down below. It was a pleasure having you, and thank you for, doing a deep dive into your business and how, if somebody would want to replicate that to a degree in the future, or if somebody wants to learn how to do it, I guess they can definitely reach out to you and have a conversation with you. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Nabil.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.